There we go. All right, we are recording. So thanks everybody for attending. I've got Nicholas Rejack and Philip Chase here at the University of Florida with me in my office. And this is Vivo Apps and Tool call number 8. And today the main agenda that I wanted to talk about was the hackathon. And then possibly I think we may have a demo from Ted Lawless. Will give us a demo of Google Refine and some ways that he's been working with it. So welcome everybody. I see that David Harrison is here, and Paul and Ted and us, and Jim Blake is on with John Corson Reichert. They're finishing up a meeting real quick, and they'll be on in a few minutes. So if everyone doesn't know, the Implementation Fest is on for March 19th through the 23rd. Look at Nicholas.
I think so.
In Durham, North Carolina. And that's basically a Wednesday. I don't know about the dates or not, but that's a Wednesday through a Thursday. Wednesday through Friday. And we're talking about having, and it looks like most likely we'll be able to have a space for it. We're talking about having the Tuesday beforehand, which I believe is March 18th. We're having a all-day hackathon. So we've gotten support for this idea from John Corson Reichert and from the VIVO Implementation Fest team. We think that they'll be able to give us some time on Friday to also present any interesting findings from the hackathon. So what I wanted to discuss today, as we have some people here, is what they thought of as for a format for the hackathon. So I can give a brief summary of what we had done here in the past for VIVO hackathons, and then I wanted to kind of open it up to the group to discuss what they thought of when they thought of a hackathon and what they thought the format should be. So just to give you some background, I believe in 2011 we had a hackathon here at the University of Florida. Basically, we got 2 very large conference rooms from our library, and we brought in computer access and whiteboards and sticky notes and markers and lots of soda and food continuously available. And we had invited people from Europe and a lot of the different semantic web communities and RPI and some groups that were outside of the VIVO main VIVO development team. And we basically gave them one general direction, which was come up with something interesting related to VIVO. And that was it. There was no, please build us this specific tool, or we want something with data ingest. And there was a lot of discussion before the hackathon about whether or not we should give kind of general directions or not. But it was decided in the end by the main steering committee of the hackathon that they didn't want to limit or hold back any of the developers or any of the participants by giving them very specific instructions. And believe it or not, what came out of that was some pretty interesting tools. People went ahead and made data ingest tools, even though we wanted them, but we didn't tell them to. And people went and made better search tools, even though we didn't say we wanted search tools, but it was just kind of a natural falling on of some of the discussions that they thought of, things that were lacking in VIVO. So I think it was a pretty good success. And so what I wanted to hear from you guys is if you've had any other hackathon experiences or what you thought of for formats for this one. So I'll go ahead and open it up. So please give us some thoughts.
So this is Yen from NYU. I've been to a couple hackathons up here for like NYC Big Apple, and there was one by Pearson. So there's some companies up here that do hackathons sometimes, and it's pretty much like that. I mean, the groups are probably a little bit more heterogeneous in that. I mean, the last one I went to, there were like 200 people there. And so, people just start talking to each other about doing something, and then people go off into their own rooms, and it's pretty much, a free for all, except for, like you described, a single objective. So, in Pearson's case, it was, you have to use our API to do something interesting. Um, and then typically at the end of these, there are prizes, at these hackathons where there'll be some judges that judge the idea or whatever, and then um, yeah, and sometimes there are awards, some small cash prizes or something afterwards. But I think the format in general that you described is similar to most of the ones that I've been to.
Yeah, that was one of the interesting things that I noticed was the how people basically the first couple hours were people just talking to each other, getting to know each other, and then almost instantaneously after the 2 hours was up, they formed little groups, people that had similar interests that were from different countries, different backgrounds, but there was one group that got together simply because they all liked Python and they just wanted to
Yeah,
do something interesting with Vivo and Python, even though different backgrounds, and they kind of self-selected. That was what was interesting too.
right.
So has anybody else had any experience with hackathons or any feedback on what they thought might be some interesting um, suggestions? I wrote down use the API to do something interesting because we do have a new API coming out in a new release. We could say use the new ontology to do something interesting. I mean, we have a new ontology coming out, right?
Well, is there a general objective? I mean, besides people just hacking away at something, I mean, was there a class of things you'd like to see or produce?
Well, this is Chris, and speaking for me personally, I would like to see more visualizations. I really think that we've assembled a lot of fantastic data that's interlinked in ways that people can't really understand unless they see it. So,
Got it. Well, maybe there's a way to specify, like, a track or something like that. And so, get people thinking about things in a certain ballpark. So you can be like, well, there's a visualization track. And here, we're going to be doing kind of this is what we're looking for. Um, so it gives it a little bit of structure, but not too much structure that not too much structure that it limits people's thinking, but but some structure that it maybe people can get creative.
yeah, I mean that's why I wanted to come up with some topics or concepts, not to give anybody any specific ones, but some ideas that we've had here and in my talks with other people.
Oh yeah,
Paul
sorry.
was interested in faceted search, and I think that's a great idea. He had some screenshots from some prototypes from a long time ago. I'm interested in visualizations. Down here at Florida, we're working on CV and biosketch generation, and I saw something interesting in another program recently where it was able to basically put these items, not a CV or biosketch, but the documents it created, it put them right into Google Docs for you and shared them out automatically with a group. So I thought that was pretty neat.
Right.
Open social widgets, Vivo dashboards, Vivo mobile. I mean, these are all ideas that I've had for general topic areas, and I was hoping this group might have some more topics that they could see that would be interesting to have people do at a hackathon, or maybe have people write as apps.
Did you have a sense of what the deliverable would be?
Yeah, I'm hoping to give. I mean, the only really specific instruction that I'd like to do is I'd like that each group that forms that does a project is I want them to prepare a 5 minute presentation. And I'm hoping that John will
Okay.
give me an hour on Friday to where I can have, four or five-minute presentations on what they have done in the few days. The hackathons I've been part of, that was almost the most important part because it gave them
Yeah.
a deadline and it gave them a requirement to actually document whatever they had done. And so then that was really important because otherwise it kind of they did something great, but there was you know no exposition of it or no lasting evidence that it existed. And
Right.
we still look at those presentations from the first hackathon here. I think that one of the things that we're going to be better off during this hackathon than we were last time is last time we had real trouble having development environments for people to play with things on, and we'd actually opened up some of our internal servers here at UF to give people development environments to go hack on Vivo. Now with Ted's great work with Vagrant, and probably Ted, your Vagrant is 1.5, right? So we probably need to make a Vagrant for 1.6.
Right, yeah. It would need to be changed just a bit to install 1.6.
So I was thinking that before the hackathon, I would work with Ted and we'd get around to making a Vagrant config for 1.6 so that people could have a pretty simple and easy way to stand up a development environment to be able to play with during the hackathon. That took up a lot more time during the last hackathon than I think was necessary. So, yeah, prize is someone wrote Infinite Glory. Right, exactly. Interlinking data across videos, yes. Go ahead.
Chris, may I chime in?
Please, Paul.
Well, I have a couple ideas. First of all, I really do like the idea of having some structure in place. No one's gonna get in trouble for violating structure, especially if they have a better idea. But I think sometimes part of the problem is, well, what do people really want? So you could maybe cut down on some of the head scratching if you have someone describe an app ahead of time. So one of the ideas that I proposed was faceted search, because I think that people don't really understand the value of VIVO and being able to search for something like cancer and see that there's grants about it and there's people who've worked on it in publications and then different types of people, and it just really illustrates the value of the data model and the VIVO proposition in general. In terms of visualizations, that might be something where a group of us might want to kind of get together and look at Harvard Profile, see what else is out there, to just come up with like a better, like some ideas about what might be more effective visualizations. With regard to VIVO dashboards, I think that there's a general market for people who want to repurpose VIVO data, and having a dashboard that does that would make sense. So I'm working. I've been in touch with Miles Worthington, and if all goes as planned, we'll fund him to follow through on this VIVO dashboard idea for publications. It's going to use D3 to create bar graphs and export Word documents and spreadsheets, and he's going to do it without having to use a Sparkle endpoint. I think he told me he would be able to go directly into VIVO in the same way he does for his Searchlight application. So if this could be generalized more, if people could say, oh, well, I want to use D3, I want to get into VIVO, and I want to make a dashboard in the Drupal platform, put it in a tab. This is something that a lot of institutions could do. They could just set up their VIVO dashboard and say, I want this, I want this, I want this. And then people could share the visualizations that they have for any given tab.
No, I think that, wow, that was a lot of topics all at once. Plus, there was that provocative statement that he figured out how to get into VIVO without a Sparkle endpoint. So there's a couple things there, Paul.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. We'll see.
You need to get him to write a document on that and on what his methods are. We'd all love to know that. No, I think that's great. I think one of the ideas that I had while you were talking were that maybe we could get some sponsors for some prizes, and the sponsors could dictate a prize for the best, the best dashboard, or a prize for. So there could be different general categories, kind of like people pitching their proposal to the group of hackers. Like, here's my proposal of something I always wanted to see, and here's how much I'd be willing to pay for it as a prize or whatever. Maybe infinite glory, and and perhaps that way they can tell a little story, kind of like a use case, and give people ideas. Maybe I definitely think we should have some stories for people to understand what we think would be helping, because we've talked to a lot of different people that have used Vivos. So yeah, I've got to think of a good way to integrate that, because the people that I think are going to come, though, I also are notoriously wanting to do what they want to do because they're doing it at their leisure. So it's always striking a balance.
Yeah.
Someone's typing some good notes there. So yeah, so that's a good idea. So these are the list of topics, and thank you for including those. Interlinking data across Vivos. Does anybody else have any ideas or general concepts that they would love to see somebody attack at a hackathon?
So I added the last item there about interlinking data, and that's sort of just an interest of mine, and also talking to people, one, about how to do it. So what are some tools we can use to share data across VIVO institutions for things like university names, journal names, things like that, but also brainstorm and even maybe write some code to develop workflows for syncing that data so that I can load it into my VIVO for the purposes of our needs here at Brown, but then I can sync it back up with other people's data, at any point really without too much overhead. So kind of the whole data sharing and reuse and workflows around that.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the great hope of same as, right, that we were supposed to be able to link with those, but there are some barriers that we still have in place. Like, some of our Vivos are private, some of them aren't. We want to be able to share data or pieces of it. So yeah, there's some good work to be done there. That's one of the reasons why we're trying to come up with a better way to produce our spit out our Vivo data as one big N3 file on a regular basis, which we're still choking on, by the way. So yeah, there's some work to be done there. I don't know. That's a good one for a bunch of hackers to figure out. I don't know what the answer to that is. What else here? So I'm reading through some of the comments that people have added. Yeah, Vivo mobile interface. I mean, I don't know if anybody has any specific ideas about that, but I've gotten some ideas. Mike Conlon wants to be able to make a Vivo app where he can enter the PM ID, the PubMed ID, or enter in the DOI of a pub and have it add to his profile. So I don't know how helpful that'll be, but he thinks it would be a good reference application for making a mobile app. Basically letting people add their own publications to their list of publications by simply knowing an ID for it. One of the ideas that I had were, and I heard Paul mention D3. One of the ideas that I had were using one of the lightweight JavaScript frameworks to be able to build a mobile Vivo app, but have it using Twitter Bootstrap or some other mobile-friendly style sheet engine to be able to build a mobile app that runs inside of a browser instead of having to do it on some kind of platform like Objective-C or some other more complicated thing. And the reason to do that, I think, was it would be a great reference application. So basically, I guess my idea is to build a Vivo mobile reference application for other people to use to build whatever their ideas are. Because I think there'll probably be other people with better ideas on what they could do with mobile Vivo data.
So in terms of the development environment, were you thinking to populate it with a bunch of test data?
Where did we go? Oh. Hello?
Oh,
Sorry about that. I guess you couldn't hear me. I accidentally hit the mute button. So Nicholas was telling us about how we did a this for CTSA Connect.
Yeah, we had a Vivo 1.51 VM with some template modifications that we added JavaScript code to. And on the same VM, we were also running Fuseki. And we connected internally to that Fuseki right out of the JavaScript. It was just a GET request right inside the JavaScript code on the page. And that brought back data in real time that was then displayed in line with a normal Vivo page.
But basically, we were able to create a virtual development environment where we were able to play with the Google API to do the tag cloud we built right inside of with live Vivo data, but it was all, or not live Vivo, but with a copy of our Vivo data inside of a VM. Or some of our Vivo data, I should say. So yes, I guess I don't know if I was muted for the whole time there, but yes, one of the ideas is to create a Vivo VM that has data in it that people can use to play with, so they don't have to. That hopefully will slow down or not slow down, but speed up the development environment setup, so people can think more about these ideas that we have instead of having to try and bootstrap an environment to even work in. So yeah, that's something I plan on having set up for the hackathon. By the way, I'm also looking for any volunteers that would like to help me coordinate the hackathon and would like to help, be organizers. And you don't all have to jump to volunteer at once. You can contact me off.
Where in the Bahamas are you hosting the pre-event, Chris?
What's that?
Where in the Bahamas are you hosting the pre-event party?
Exactly. With lots of free booze.
Yeah.
I will buy beer for people that help volunteer, though, when we get to Raleigh, Durham. So there might be some free beer involved. So anyway, this is going to be this has been some great suggestions. I just I want everyone here to kind of think about it, because March will be here before you know it. December is pretty much over, even though it's the 3rd of December, because we're getting right into the holiday season. And John, I don't know how soon do we have to have a more concrete plan for the hackathon? How soon do I have to have that together?
Well, my sense is that Julia is wanting to get a little more advanced organization than Colorado. Liz and Alex, I think, were willing to fly a little bit more by the seat of the pants. Okay. Although they had to put a fair amount of effort into getting rooms lined up and stuff like that. So they may have just used all their and they sort of left the program up to people from other, I think Christy and I have worked on it, and Paul, you worked on it some, and Eliza in previous years, and so forth. So I think it's, my general sense is that the sooner we get an enticing list of things to work on and some parameters, the easier it is for people to start making the case to get the travel money,
Okay.
which is usually the problem.
Okay. Do you think I need to put out a an RSVP kind of thing so I can get a list of possible attendees beforehand, or?
What we might do is talk it up on the Thursday calls and suggest that people email you if they think there's any chance they'll be able to come.
Okay.
And see, because some of them might need a little, it might be easier for them to come if they work on some specific thing that would benefit their organization.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I figured sooner rather than later, so I'll try and I'll try and put together something more organized before Thursday. But
well,
yeah,
I don't think it has to be. I think part of the idea of the hackathon is that the people who show up may, sort of decide what to work on. I do agree with Paul that having some structure there so that you don't lose the first half day stumbling around trying to think about what people might want, would be helpful. It'd be nice to vet this with the other working groups and.
well, I mean, I didn't want to put too much structure in people's ideas, but here's my idea of the format for the day. Early morning introduction, hopefully, some inspirational words from John Corson Reichert, and then I would probably spend about 45 minutes to an hour giving everyone the toolbox that we developed. So making sure that everyone could download Vagrant, get it installed, get the Vagrant VM set up, and basically be in a position to do work after the first hour. So if we started at 8, hopefully by 9 o'clock, 9:15, everybody had a VIVO installed on their laptop and with data in it, and they were basically able to, at that point, do whatever creative thing that they wanted to do. That was a huge downfall of the last one, is I think we spent more time trying to do that than was necessary. We wasted a lot of the day. So I was really going to work hard on trying to make sure that I had a good program and I had helpers available to go around and get everybody set up from a development standpoint so that they had a development environment in front of them within the first hour. And I'm open to any other suggestions, but that was my big thought on how I could really kickstart the hackathon and really get people in a position to do something tangible. And then post-event, I was going to make a presentation or PowerPoint template set with some starter questions so that they could kind of have, I would basically outline their 5-minute presentation for them so that they're not trying to think of how to make a presentation. It was more of their answering questions and putting in screenshots and doing whatever. So that was one of the other things I was going to give them that goal, but I was also going to give them kind of a framework for them to work in so that they weren't, struggling or sometimes people get stage fright when they think they got to make a presentation and they just sit there and stare at the blank thing forever. So I thought some prompts would be good. So basically I wanted to bookend the whole hackathon with starting them out with their development toolbox and then ending them up with having a presentation template so that when they were done, they could go right ahead and do their presentation, or at least write it. And I'm open to any suggestions on any other different way to do that. Well, cool. And thank you to whoever's been taking notes. I think that was Nicholas was helping me there. So it's 1:33, and I don't want to run out of time. We can get back to this in a minute, but I did want to give some time because I know that Ted, who gave a demonstration in the last call, thank you very much, has kindly volunteered to give another demonstration on today's call, and he was going to give us a quick look at some of the things that he does with Google Refine to work with his VIVO data. So Give me just a second here while I change presenter to Ted. And I'll switch over. There you go, Ted. I should be handing it off to you. Awesome.
Okay.
I can see the screen.
So I put some notes in a gist online, so you can follow along here. I'll put it in the chat window. But a while back when Chris was looking for volunteers to talk about different apps and tools, I mentioned two things: Silk Workbench, which I talked about during the last call, and Google Refine, which they're similar tools in some ways. And so Google Refine is a tool that came out of the Freebase project, and it runs in your browser. I think many of you are familiar with it. And it's a tool, what they say is for a power tool for working with messy data, cleaning it, transforming it into one format into another. And that's basically, here at Brown, we have a lot of data about faculty that we pulled from CVs, and it's messy, and we want to clean it, merge it, and hopefully match it with identifiers on the web. And Google Refine has proved to be pretty helpful for that work. And the key part that I'm going to talk about today, Google Refine is very feature rich. I should note that it's now moving forward going to be called Open Refine. So Google has sort of released it to the community, and there's a group that has taken over development, and they are in the, I think, a beta release of a new version, but the sort of the last formal release is still called Google Refine. And so the main feature I'd like to demonstrate is reconciliation, and that's sort of conceptually kind of simple. It's you take text and you convert a way to search a web service and convert that text to a database identifier. So it's kind of this idea of going from strings to things. And I've been using one extension for Google Refine, and that's called Rdf Refine, and that allows you to search against Sparkle endpoints or local RDF files. And it also allows you to sort of import data in, let's say, CSV format, and then export that as RDF. And I have a link in the notes there to the site for the group that develops the extension, and they have some good tutorials and documentation. And some of you are also probably aware that there is a VIVO specific extension for Google Refine, and I haven't worked with that extension directly, but one of the nice byproducts of that is that work that went into creating that is that every VIVO instance has a built-in reconciliation service, so you can reconcile some data against any public VIVO. It doesn't have to be your own. So that's a pretty interesting tool if you're trying to do what I'm trying to do and get identifiers for text identifiers from other systems like Florida's VIVO. Certainly helpful, more helpful than not having an identifier. So I would like to demo how we're working with some publication data for the medical school faculty here at Brown. But before I jump into the demo, does anyone have any questions about what I've said so far?
Nope, sounds pretty good.
Okay. So the use case or the scenario that we're working with, we have a database that was compiled from faculty CVs, and one of those tables, I'll switch screens here, is publication data, and here you can see that there are 55,000 publications, Some of them are chapters and books, some are encyclopedia entries, refereed journal articles, which is the majority, and it's all text. And I'm going to scroll through the columns here, and you can see that there is a DOI column and a PubMed ID column, but that's not populated for the most part. Fewer than 1% of those publications have a PubMed identifier or a DOI. So our goal is to get those DOIs so that we can have authoritative data in our VIVO and do things with the co-author visualizations and the like. So what we've been doing and plan to do more of is we're exporting the journal names for the refereed journal articles in this data. So that's sort of a straightforward data dump, and we are importing that into Refine, and then we're using a web service from a group out of the UK, which I linked to in the notes, the Journal TOCs group, and they have basically basic metadata and links to home pages and RSS feeds for thousands of journals, academic journals. And we wrote a little web service that transfers or converts responses from the Journal TOCs API into the format that Google Refine wants for a reconciliation API. So that's what we've been up to for at least for journal titles, and I can sort of walk you through that process. So this is Google Refine, and I have exported some data from that publication database I was showing you, and I'm going to import that. And this is sort of, we found that Google Refine is sort of nice in terms of a graphical interface that allows you to do some pretty powerful things. So you can see that I've imported that CSV. Basically, I got two identifiers which will allow me to match it back up with a row in that original database. So this is I believe this is the publication number, the identifier for the faculty member, and the title of the journal that was pulled from the CV. So I'm going to import this project, or create this project using Refine. It'll take a second. So you can see I have publications, and I ordered this data when I exported it from MySQL. So you can see I have a lot of repetition in the journal title names, but also a lot of variance. You can see I have am heart J period, things like that. And also no ISSNs for any of these titles. So one of the nice things that Refine allows you to do is run some text processing algorithms against your data, and I'm going to do that kind of quickly just for demonstration purposes. I'm going to add a new column to my data, and I'm going to call this normalized title. So now I've repeated that, and that just allows me to sort of have some preserve the original data in my worksheet while I'm working with it. And then I can do one of the built-in functions is some clustering algorithms, and you can see how quickly that loaded, but basically it's identifying strings in my data set that are similar but not exactly equal, and providing this nice interface for me to merge them. So I can just click here and merge these three variations on the journal title into one row. And in some of these you can see that we seem to have just about every variation of a journal title or abbreviation you could think of, and some of them aren't exactly straightforward to know that they are the same, but you know, sometimes doing this you can Google the title name or sort of make a best guess. And I can click here, merge selected and recluster, and all of that data was clustered, or merged rather. And there's also different algorithms, or keying functions they call them, to perform different text matching tools. So I'm going to merge these as well before I move on to the next step. So that basically has reduced the number of unique journal names in this sample data set, and they're all in that column normalized title now. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually reconcile them against that web service I described from the journals TOC project. So I'm going to click on Start Reconciling. And you can see here on the left, I've used this before, so I have many different reconciliation sources. And I'm going to click the journal TOC reconciliation service. And it's searching that service now. And it's telling me I can match against periodicals. And I click Start Reconciling. And I ran this earlier, so you can see in this window this web service is running locally, so the queries are running in the background here. And depending on how much data you're working with, it could take a few minutes.
What is the output going to look
So
like?
what were the inputs to the API again?
So it should be done. Here we go. So basically what it's done is taken this text string and send it to some local code that is really is just a wrapper around this API. So it's doing a journal title name search against this API, and then presenting the user with sort of the most likely matches. Is that clear?
So the API will handle. Is it a direct match, or the API actually does some sort of fuzzy matching too?
Yes, the code I wrote to connect to the API does some fuzzy matching, and you can see these scores here in parentheses. So that's a 100% match. These are 76, so on.
Great.
And again, there's a lot here, so but I'm just going to show some of the basic things we've been doing. You can facet your reconciliation results. I'm going to say it went ahead and auto-matched these here that are 100. And I'm going to say only show me the things that haven't been matched yet. And then I can use this facet here to narrow in on the items with a high score. I guess it didn't auto-match this. I must not have. There's an option to auto-match the best candidate, and I didn't check that. So by going through these quickly, I can see that this is definitely a match, and I have two options. I can say match only this name to this thing, or match all the names that are the same to this thing. So I'll do that, and I go from, it went ahead and merged all 25 of those. And then I can do the same with this, same with this. So you can see how it's sort of not completely automated, but it's speeding up that process. So like this one, it's not clear to me offhand if these are the same journals. So I'm just going to click create new topic, which basically means don't match that item. Same with this one. Same with this one. So it looks like I matched 35 rows in just a small set of data. So the final step, or one of the final steps, is I can now, using that web service, add new data to my project. So I want to go reconcile actions. Actually, sorry, I want to add column based on this column. And I'm going to create a new column, I'm going to call this URI, and I'm going to type this expression in here. And you can see that it's used that match to pull out more data that was returned by the web service. So now I have a URI for each of these journal names that includes the ISSN. So now my data is reconciled at least against this small sample. And using the Rdf extension, I can then create what they call an Rdf Skeleton and export this data as RDF. So I can add the VIVO ontology, and I can add DC terms. And then I can say, let's see, I need to say what type these resources are. They're VIVO journals. And URI is in the URI column. And the title is in the normalized title column. And the property is DC terms title. And then I can preview this, and you can see I now have RDF. Oops, I made a mistake there. So I now have an RDF snippet of what I just resolved. Click OK. And then I go up to this export menu and say export RDF as turtle. And I have all the data that I just reconciled available as RDF. And then, of course, it takes a little work to, in your workflow, to sort of actually load this into VIVO or match it up with the original data. But our goal is, if we can get ISSNs for the publication venues, using that and the date of publication and the starting page for the article, we found that using a Crossref API that we can get a large percentage of those titles, those publications with those three elements. We can get a large percentage of those. We can get DOIs for them using this Crossref OpenURL API. So that's sort of the quick overview of some of the things that you can do with Refine, and that's the one that we're sort of working on when we have time to focus on the publications. So that's what I had prepared. The notes probably do. There's some links in there that I think are worth checking out if you're interested in this.
And you can
So then do you just bring them in with do you just use the OpenURL URI as you bring them into VIVO rather than creating a VIVO URI for the journal?
So that's something we need to work out. So using the OpenURL, you'll get a DOI, which does serve linked data, so you could potentially use that. I think for terms of, we would also want to, but the RDF returned by Crossref is different than what VIVO is expecting, so we're going to have to do some sort of conversion there to make it searchable. And we've done quite a bit of that already.
But VIVO will render that URI. If you put in the URI of the journal, VIVO would render that, unless you tell it that that's an external namespace, VIVO would just, I guess it wouldn't return linked data requests, though, for something, it would return linked data from Crossref, because if someone saw that in your data, which might not be bad, I guess.
And that's part of the motivation, or I would be interested in talking to some people at the Implementation Fest or even before then about kind of how could we do efficiently what John is describing.
Yeah, it's almost like, what do you do? Because I'm sure there's more than one URI for the Alcoholism Clinical and Experimental Research Journal, right? There's a Vivo URI that could be in my Vivo. There's one in yours. There's the Crossref one. There could be one in DBpedia, right?
Right. So, I mean, our thought at this point is that we have already mint, a local URI, but also, but use this tool to pull in the ISSN, the OCLC number if we have it for the publications, and use that as our, match point for work further down the line.
So your thinking is, if we all have the OCLCs, that we could all match our local URIs with your remote URIs that way?
I mean, that'd be one way.
But with vocabulary terms, we've been bringing in the remote URI and just using that in Vivo, so that if someone picks an LCSH or a mesh term, it's the actual URI of that term. And unless you tell Vivo, I mean, you can tell Vivo we had this set up with the Weill Cornell Vivo for a while, where we would say that Weill Cornell is an external namespace, and don't attempt to render it. Just transfer the user to the Weill Cornell Vivo and render that URI there, which wouldn't work very well here, because you have no idea what application is behind that URI to render it for a browser. But as long as you don't do that and just let Vivo render it, Vivo will be happy to render whatever statements you have relative to that URI, that journal URI, in your local Vivo, and then your data would have that remote URI in it. And you could also use the same as statement, but we're sort of debating what to do about that. Whether Vivo would need to have a type, or otherwise know more about this remote URI.
Yeah, I think there's some good discussions that could go on at the Implementation Fest about using same as, now that we're trying to do more linking of data between sources. Well, I just want to say a special thank you to Ted. I hit him yesterday asking him to present today, because I didn't have a lot to present, and I really appreciate him. As usual, he puts together a fantastic demonstration very fast, and with a lot of good references out there on GIST, on GitHub, and some good links. So I really appreciate it, Ted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ted.
Thank you, Ted.
So we're getting towards the end of the hour. Does anybody have any other business they'd like to discuss about apps and tools? Or any suggestions on how to improve future calls?
Hi, this is David. I just wanted to say thanks for letting me sit in on the call.
Oh, no. Thank you, David, for coming.
So I didn't announce myself, but I'm with UCLA, and I'm doing some just investigation into Vivo and different ways of interfacing with it. So
Thanks for joining.
Sure, thank you.
Well, you're more than welcome to join us in future calls, and maybe are you a self-proposed hacker?
I don't think I know enough at this point about Vivo to join a hackathon, but it certainly sounds fun.
Are you doing anything with semantic data anywhere else?
Not anywhere else yet.
Oh, well, this will be an exciting time for you. Then you have to give up all your preconceptions on what you thought you knew about data. At least that's what I think.
All right.
I had to drink the Kool-Aid to come into the semantic data world.
Okay.
No, but it's great having you. Thanks. And
okay. Thank you very much. I'll try to join you next time.
Thanks.
Well, thanks guys for attending, and I'm looking at the calendar here real quick, and it looks like our next call was scheduled to be on the 17th. How does everybody feel about having the next call on the 17th? Are people going to be around, or is that too much into the holiday season?
I'll be in Albany that day, but that doesn't mean anything for anybody else.
I'll be around.
I'll be around.
Well, fantastic.
There's another meeting coming, so.
Well, thank you guys. I'm going to then tentatively schedule the next call for December 17th at 1 p.m.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
See you soon.